Thank you for joining me as we take a fourth and final look at Psalm 17. I showed you in previous reflections how I've divided this psalm up in a way that I think reflects the structure and the flow of the argument that David makes in this very powerful prayer. So we saw in the first 5 verses what I call the psalmist's innocence as he lays the ground for his confidence in coming to God in prayer. We saw in verses 6 to 9 the Saviour's steadfastness. It's God's chesed love, his covenant love towards David that gives him confidence to come and ask bold things. We saw last time the enemy's arrogance from verses 10 to 14. And David prayed some bold things to God concerning his enemies. But he ends on this gloriously triumphant, confident note in verse 15. As for me, I shall behold your face in righteousness. When I awake, I shall be satisfied with your likeness. Now, the beginning of the verse points out the fact he's making a contrast with the wicked, his enemies, of whom he mentioned in the previous verse. And they are very earthbound and earth-centered and earth-limited. They are men of the world. Their portion is in this life, says David. They are satisfied with the children and they leave their abundance to their infants, and that's their life. They live as if this is the only world and the only existence there is. But, says David, as for me, I'm looking forward to something greater, something more lasting, something more enduring, something altogether more wonderful in eternity. And he mentions 2 specific things. He says, I shall behold your face, God, in righteousness. Now, I take that to be a long-term expectation of a full answer to his prayer back in verse 2 for vindication. See, we have to realize, as David no doubt realized, that we don't always get vindication in this life. Sometimes our enemies triumph over us. They don't always get their comeuppance this side of eternity. Many Christians lose their lives and end their lives at the hand of their oppressors and persecutors. God does not physically deliver them from danger in this life. But David's time scale is longer than that. David's perspective is much greater than that. He knows that in the life to come, he will be fully vindicated. And so he rests with that assurance. And he says, I shall behold your face, he says to God. It's very personal. I shall see you in righteousness. And then he says, when I awake, I shall be satisfied with your likeness. My friends, I dare to suggest there isn't a greater understatement in the entire Word of God than that. When I awake, I shall be satisfied with your likeness. All of this life, through all our trials and tribulations and heartaches, God is shaping us and molding us so that one day we will awake in a state in which we can enjoy glory. And that state is to be in the likeness of Jesus. Now, if you know your own heart a fraction as well as I know mine, you'll know that God's still got an awful lot of work to do to get me ready for that. But that's what he's doing day by day, chipping away. So to give me that confidence that one day when I awake, I shall be satisfied with the likeness of God. What a glorious confidence we have as believers. I want to close this little devotion by telling you the story of an old covenanter called Alexander Hume. And in 1682 he was burned to death, as many covenanters were, at the Mercat Cross in the centre of Edinburgh. And as he went to his death, knowing what faced him, he sang a metrical psalm based on the last verse of Psalm 17. These are the words he sang. But as for me, I thine own face in righteousness will see, and with thy likeness, when I wake, I satisfied shall be. Friends, don't envy the wicked. Don't envy the ungodly, because everything they have, they will lose. Only be satisfied with Jesus, now and in eternity. Please join me next time. We're going to look at Psalm 18, which in recent months has become one of my very favourite psalms in the whole book of Psalms. And until then, the Lord bless you and the Lord keep you.